Ladies and gentlemen, a very, very good morning to you. It's Wednesday, it's 10 o'clock, and we are live at MPW London headquarters to give it its most dramatic billing. But that can mean only one thing. We're in round 4 now of our webinar series. And today is probably a little bit over too enthusiastically named Viva la Visa for the topic we have to cover. But it is a critical topic, seen not least by the number of people who have actually registered for this specific event. So there's a lot of people who are going to need a lot of things demystifying and de-jargon busting on this particular call itself today, on this webinar series. Now, before we start, I'm going to just pop something onto the screen in front of you, which is a QR code. Our presenter today, who I'll introduce in just a moment, has asked that you scan this QR code and have your phones at the ready in order to take the quiz, the icebreaker, that will give you a bit of a sense as to what you know, what you don't know, and then we can spend the next hour filling in the gaps, as it were. But we live in interesting times, ladies and gentlemen. Whilst that's on the screen, giving you the opportunity to download that. We live in interesting times. We've always been a very welcoming country. There was always a sign, there still is, saying welcome to the UK when you actually get to our borders. The only thing is that now that welcome sign seems to come with an awful lot of other words attached to it. But fortunately for all of us, particularly us at MPW, but for you today, we have Nadia Douglas with us. Nadia is our head of international compliance and admissions for the MPW group. Many of you probably have spoken to Nadia or her team already, but rather more impressively, Nadia is also the regional lead for East Anglia for the International Compliance Network here in the UK. And so if ever there was a better person to be able to answer all the questions today, I don't think we'd have that person with us. So without further ado, let me bring Nadia in. Nadia, I can see people registering very quickly for this particular icebreaker challenge you've set this morning. But Nadia, good morning. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm slightly overwhelmed and definitely feeling very cherished by having such an abundance in attendance and registrations today. So very welcome and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, dependent on the time zones that you're joining us from today.
There we go. Absolutely, you're a natural for this. I won't scare you with how many people I can see still appearing on the channel. But suffice it to say, we're now very, very safely into the mid triple figure number here. So I'm going to hand over to you to start off with. I'll be with you throughout the session, but for now, let me hand over to Nadia. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions, you have the Q&A function. For those who've been with us throughout the rest of these webinars, you'll know how this works. Please do feel free to leave a question within there. We will get to it. I'll either interrupt Nadia as we go to ask the question if it's appropriate, or we'll have time for a further Q&A at the end. Always remembering there is a slight time delay on this particular recording of about 30 seconds. Nadia, over to you for Viva la Visa.
Fantastic, thank you. So without further ado, let's start. In our MPW talks today, we will concentrate on breaking the ice a little bit and taking ourselves away from all the serious and deep matters of immigration compliance. We will then look at operational updates and what the Home Office have been working really hard on in the background of all the immigration changes. We will also focus on best practice for child student visa applications in light of those new immigration changes. And closer to the end of our session, we will also share our helpful MPW guides on how to support and guide you with the completion and submission of the visa applications to avoid any errors, any delays on processing times, and we will also divert to you where you will have an opportunity to answer questions. Please, as James suggested, rely on the Q&A function, and we will address any questions there and then. So for those of you who have already managed to scan the QR code, let me just reshare the screen and we will start with the quiz. So I think we've got about 28 participants so far. For those of you who might be delayed, just jump onto the quiz and we'll start from there. So question number 1. when you apply for a visa to join an academic program in the UK, you rely on your 10 seconds countdown starts. You rely on course, CAS, COE, or COP. And of course, the correct answer is CAS, which stands for Confirmations of Acceptance for Studies. On to the question number 2. Which programs can you not study under student visa route? Your options are A-level, GCSE, foundation, or an English language program. Well done to those who have picked a GCSE program, as it's accredited at RQF level 2. Unfortunately, it's not a possibility for those under student visa route to join that program. So you can only apply under child student visa route. Question number 3. What could be the status of the nominated guardian in the UK for a child student who is in full boarding? Is it single, married, settled, or unsettled? It's actually a settled status. Sorry, it was a little bit of a tricky questions playing on words, but settled is the status that guardian needs to have in order to be a nominated guardian. How many sponsorship licenses does MPW and its 3 colleges have? Is it 1, 2, 3, or 4? Fantastic. So with the locations of MPW in Birmingham, Cambridge, and London, we do have 3 different licenses to sponsor students. Question number 5. What's the processing times for the standard service study visa application? Is it 7 calendar days, 7 working days, 15 calendar days, or 15 working days? It is actually 15 working days. And if you do have an option of applying for priority, then your time could be limited to 5 working days in that instance. Okay. If applying overseas for a child student or a student visa, how long are the vignettes or visa stickers valid for? Do they cover 30 days, full course duration, 90 days, or they are unlimited? Okay, so the answer is actually 90 days, which has been increased post-COVID, and previously all the vignettes were valid only for 30 days. Question number 7. How much are the monthly living expenses are for child, student, or student applications if you choose to study in Cambridge as your location? And the correct answer is £1,136 per month, and you usually multiply it by 9. Next question is a true or false rather than a multi-choice. Living independently is possible for a 17-year-old student under student route. Is it yes or a no? It's actually true because anyone who is aged under the age of 18, but between 16 and 17, they could live independently. But a little bit of a trick to these questions is under the student route, you do not need to declare what the arrangement of your living situation will be. Question number 9, we're almost at the end. Which of the following close relatives do not meet the UKVI guidance criteria? Is it grandparent, cousin, step-parent, or aunt and uncle? It's actually a cousin who is not on the approved list to be a close relative in the guidance by the UKVI. And our last question is, what does IHS stand for? Is it International Health Scheme, Immigration Health Surcharge, International Health Society, or Integrated Health System? And the majority were correct. It's an immigration health surcharge. This does apply to anyone who is coming to study in the UK and whose visa duration will take over 6 months. And that allows those applicants to actually rely and use the services of NHS within the UK. So thank you very much again. We will now move on to the serious matters of immigration compliance and focus on the latest operational changes that the UKVI have introduced. Just bear with me a second. So 2025, we've only just marked 6 months of the new year, and it seems that 2025 is definitely makes it memorable for all of us. With the earliest introduction of review and increase of maintenance and living costs on the 2nd of January, now when the students are deciding to study either in London or outside of the London area, they need to be preparing their financial evidence and ensuring that the maintenance costs are at least 1,483 per month and multiplying it by 9 months. Should they decide to study in our locations like Cambridge or Birmingham, they should be relying on £1,136 per month. The 9th of April marks another quite a significant change in the calendar of Home Office and UKVI, because in usual visa applications review, which have seen a hike of student and child student visa applications fees going from 490 to 524, it's been an absolutely unprecedented hike in the CAS cost, because it has risen by 120% from £25 to 55. This is something that obviously not applicants or agents or the families are aware of, but this is something that has been targeted at the educational and sponsors providers. So as a fact of eliminating anyone who seems to be working on CAS assurance in a less straightforward way. The electronic travel authorization form, which has been introduced to anyone who previously did not require any advance permission to enter the UK. For example, any European nationals who are coming here for a visit or a study period of up to 6 months, or any Hong Kong nationals, they now need to apply for electronic travel authorization form. And in the early weeks of it being introduced as of 8th of January, the cost has risen from £10 to 16. Talking about digitalization updates, as you remember, last year, the Home Office had started to work on phasing out any BRPs, and the work has been more of a pilot from the 1st of June 2024, whereas they focused and started targeting and trialing out how will it work with applicants creating their e-visas, creating their UKVI accounts, and working on practicalities of things. Unfortunately, it hasn't really been a smooth sailing. Just to let you know, any applications that have been granted and decision has been made as of 7th of November 2024, no applicants have received BRP cards. So they were automatically been issued with decision letters and with the steps advising on how to create a UKVI account and subsequently link e-visa to it. In our support of every single student who is enrolled currently at MPW. It's been a very clunky process, shall we say, because there's been quite a few unawareness situations where there's some passports, for example, to validate the student's ID will have chip, some will not. Some students might have received help from overseas and their accounts have been linked to a third party rather than the student. So we have worked really, really hard, and I'm proud to say that prior to January, 1st of January 2025, when officially the e-visas were supposed to kick in, we have had every single applicant who was supported, who had the right documents linked to their e-visa and were educated and able to create a share code so their return post New Year into the new term was as smooth as it's practically been possible. As of 1st of June, the BRPs are no longer in use. They could still be used to validate the identity of a person applying for a visa, and they can go through the biometric checks. But unfortunately, you can no longer show an expired BRP and try to board the plane or enter the UK. You are purely required to rely on a share code, on showing your e-visa and having your identity documents linked to your e-visa. Again, just to reiterate, having an e-visa, you then have to subsequently log into something that's known as a UKVI account and go through the updates to be able to see whether your latest passport, your latest ID is actually linked to the e-visa correctly. We will be sharing some of the slides and obviously helpful links, how you can advise your students and any students who are departing us over the summer term and are expected to come back to us in September. We will be following with the communication to ensure that when they attempt to board that flight in August, early September, none of the issues will happen to prevent them from taking that flight. Moving on to the 15th of July is the new date that the Home Office have put in our calendars, is the entry clearance vignettes and going away from them. So as you're probably aware, anyone who is applying for a child student or a student visa and they're making an application overseas, it was a common way of granting their visa by collecting their passport, storing it either within the visa application center environment or sending it off all the way to the UK. And the vignettes, which were essentially a sign of visa being granted, have been put in their passports. The vignettes was always post-COVID, was valid for 90 days. And that 90 days allows you a multiple entry into the UK and back out. With the sign of 15th of July, we are advised that decisions that were being made after that date will see lack of vignettes being printed. There is obviously a significant risk to how this might be interpreted either by students or their families and also by the UKVI themselves when they grant entry to those arriving in the UK. But essentially what you need to bear in mind, if your passport has come back and there is no vignette there, and we're talking about post 15th of July 2025, you are strongly advised to look at your decision letter, which is now always communicated by email at a point in time when the decision has been granted. It will obviously go to the nominated email addresses that you have provided during the visa application, and that decision letter will advise from which date your decision is valid from. You're only allowed to travel to the UK post that date or on that date. Please do not make any arrangements to travel earlier, even if you have a visitor visa or you've got an electronic travel authorization, which is valid from much earlier, just because you want to spend a few days in the UK, you want to settle prior to the start of your course. You're only allowed to enter as a student from the day of your application being granted from. For sponsors as well as for the students to confirm that they've got the valid right to study, they will be advised to keep their boarding passes evidence of their entry to the UK until their enrollment date. So if you do happen to have students who wish to travel to the UK sooner than the start date of that program, but in line with the start of their visa date, please ask them to take a picture of the boarding pass, do a screenshot of the one in their Apple or Google Wallet. So when it comes to the registration enrollment, we're not trying to backtrack and validate whether the student has entered the UK and they entered it under the right to study rather than not. Okay, we are moving on swiftly to the latest immigration changes, which in application to MPW have had a heavy focus on child-student route. As we are all aware, in the past 12 months prior to those changes, safeguarding aspect and child welfare have become a focus for the UKVI. They have become more interested in travel, reception, living and care arrangements of those under 18. And in the past recruitment cycle, we have seen an increased number of queries coming from the decision-making team, which obviously makes an impact on the visa processing times, to query and seek further clarification as to how the student will be cared for, how they will be residing, who will be meeting them at the airport, how will they make their travel arrangements to the UK. All of these queries have been received by ourselves and obviously answered in a prompt manner. What we would like to recommend in future and as we're going in our busiest time, and I know sometimes you feel that you would like to answer as soon as possible and not to have a delay, but whenever you are submitting an application on behalf of the students, could you please do reach out to us if you happen to receive further communication clarification from the UKVI and share that email with us as the sponsor. We will collect the full set of documents and provide the response in such a manner which will likely avoid any further delays, and us having the transparency and awareness of what's going on will help us deal with it and lobby the sector for better change, for more awareness. Because as we all know, when we do go in a busy period, UKVI also happen to have a surge in those applications. They recruit trainee staff who might not be fully aware of the changes that are coming and everything else that results as a result of these changes. So we want to make sure that we are supporting you all the step of the way, and also you're highlighting any potential concerns. So what we would like to focus on this latest immigration changes is highlight the introductions of care arrangements that the UKVI have decided to look at. So they are now seem to be focusing and wanting to know how each of a child who is applying under the child student route, how they will be living and residing in the UK. And in addition to the previously available options that you could choose when selecting the living arrangements, the boarding has now been extended and further categorized into full boarding, flexi boarding, weekly boarding. Just for those who obviously work with MPW and happen to send us anyone to be residing in our boarding house at MPW London, please do be aware that we only offer a full boarding option. We are not able to consider either flexi or weekly. It's just something that doesn't apply to our school. Obviously, anybody who is at the age of under 16 and happen to be coming to either MPW Birmingham or MPW Cambridge, as we do not have a boarding facility in either of those locations, students who are slightly younger and joining us either for pre-program or GCSE will likely be coming under the private foster care arrangement. So that hasn't gone away, it still stays there. Another good option if you happen to have an immediate close relative which also meets the criteria of the UKVI. So unfortunately, with all the common sense in the world, parents do not happen to come under the close relative route. So it's only we're looking at grandparents, step-parents considered there. We are also able to look at aunts and uncles. But what you need to bear in mind, those close relatives can only be either British or Irish nationals or have to maintain a settled status in the UK, whether it's been granted as indefinite leave to remain or they might be residing in the UK under European Union settled scheme. Another notion that's been added but been previously sort of available to students to choose, where there is a parent who also holds a parent of a child student visa. Technically, a child student can reside with their parent. So that scenario would only be possible if a student who we, for example, accommodating, they have a much younger sibling who is aged under 11, and they happen to come to another boarding school, and one of the parents of this family will be also applying for the parent of a child student visa and basically residing in the UK. In this scenario, child who studies at MPW can reside with that parent, but they can only reside with them up until the end of that visa. And the moment the younger sibling will turn 12, that obviously visa will no longer be valid. The other option that's still available and there, it's a legal option of 16 to 17-year-old and living independently. Obviously, we might consider that there might be some 16 and 17-year-olds who are very mature, who can look after themselves, who've been rather independent. But with any of the arrangements like this, when we receive a request for a student to be a day student, it's our duty of care. It's not just a safeguarding element, it's a common sense element too, that we need to know who that child is residing with, how old are those people, and should there be obviously any circumstances where the family are advising us that this is what their agreement is and how they wish to proceed, we will be working with assessing the suitability of it, not just from legal and immigration side, but also working with safeguarding team at the college and the academic performance team. The living arrangements requirement as an eligibility criterion has been introduced for a child student visa. As with maintenance requirement, as is with holding a valid CAS to apply for a visa, the decision-making team or entry clearance officers, when they're reviewing the visa application that's been submitted for an under 18 child student, will have the power to assess, and if they are not satisfied that the application in front of them with the supporting evidence and the option of care arrangements, they might be able to refuse. They need to be satisfied that the interests and the safeguarding element is present, and should they have any concern and they will not be satisfied with the supporting evidence, they can refuse the visa application. This is definitely very new. So this is not about what the parental consent might say, what the sponsors have put on their CAS. It's all about the decision-making team making that judgment call. Introduction of a nominated guardian is also a very new change. Again, it only applies to child student, only applies to those who are primarily going into boarding. We are of an understanding that the Home Office simply wants to centralize and normalize the elements of like private foster care and close relative, and also introduce the nominated guardian, and to have it all under the same umbrella and have the same requirements. As you probably know, MPW have quite a long-standing policy on international educational guardianships, which applies to any international student, whether they might be under visitor visa or child student or student visa, or even in some of the dependent circumstances where the student who joins us, and if they're not aged 21, so I would say anyone under the age of 20, they will be required to provide us with a nominated guardian. The nominated guardian in that notion is, I don't want to say it's slightly different to what the UKVI are proposing, but our policy still stands. So we will still be requesting for the guardian ID to be received, to understand what their immigration status in the UK is, and also seek further clarification on their residential arrangements, and will request a proof of address to understand that the proximity between the guardian's residence and our school is less than 2 hours. However, the UKVI focus on the nominated guardian is primarily requiring to have the nominated guardian to meet the same requirement as private foster carer and close relative, being either British or Irish citizen. That person also might hold settled status, either indefinite leave to remain or under European settled scheme. And they're proposing that that person needs to be over the age of 18, and they will be required to provide a letter of undertaking in support of the visa application. There is also an element of scrutiny there because they will be checking those guardians and who are nominated for any criminal convictions. This is something that is very new because we as a provider have got no ability to run DBS checks on guardians, as guardians are joining either on voluntary basis or it's simply a contract between the family, the agents, the students and the nominated guardian. So it becomes a very interesting topic for how the sponsors will be managing it and how will the UKVI be providing those checks. But just to let you know, in the new visa application forms, when the child is applying to study in the UK and the child student route, and they are going to reside in a boarding school, and the nominated guardian details have been provided, they will also be required to even input the passport information as well as national insurance number. National insurance number is not compulsory field, but it's something to be aware of. And obviously, if you happen to seek a family friend or a distant relative, for example, to be that nominated guardian, they need to agree and consent to that information obviously being shared with the UKVI. Also, in support of the visa application, the passport of the guardian will have to be presented, or a share code, for example, if they don't hold a British or Irish passport. And for all of the applications, a letter of undertaking, which we are providing a template for, will be shared. In place of nominated guardians, guardianship companies can also be put forward, and it's okay not to use a specific name with whom the child might, for example, reside during the time while they're studying in the UK, whether it's out of term or in term. And the letter of undertaking will need to be provided by that guardianship company and address any concerns to do with DBS checks, to do with, for example, settled British status and things like that of that nominated guardian. And the guardianship companies are allowed not to provide a specific contact for that host family during the visa application, because everyone knows that sometimes that information might be just too early to be provided, then the family might not be allocated for that specific student. The travel arrangements, it's something that we have been working really well with our students, parents and families. And as of September 2024, for the past intake, the moment that the applicant reaches the CAS stage, whether it's draft CAS, whether it's assigned, we will be sending out a travel form, which will be required to be completed by either a parent, an agent, if there is one, or the student themselves, and they will be required to complete that at a point once the travel arrangements have been finalized. So they will even need to provide us with a copy of their flight information, or again, a screenshot of the flight booking, if there is one. For anyone under the age of 18, it is a requirement to provide a responsible adult who either will be traveling with the child or will be meeting them at the airport and then taking them safely to the child's residence, or bringing them straight to school, dependent obviously on the timings of how that child lands in the UK. We strongly recommend that you pay attention to our pre-arrival emails, because all our checking in residences that MPW either work with or our boarding house, the check-in opens the weekend before the start of the term. The start of the term is the 8th, so our check-in weekend will be 6th and 7th. There are also designated times when the child could be coming in and checking in for those rooms, to having induction, having documents checks and everything what's required from a procedural perspective. So please do refer to our website and double check before the flights are booked. It will be very, I would say, unsafe for someone under the age of 18 arriving to the UK much earlier than that check-in weekend. And we will need a full detail as well as parental responsibility and consent to confirm what their child will be doing, where they will be staying, who they will be staying with, etc., and all the contact details for those individuals and responsible adults. So looking more onto the child, student and visa application changes, it would be worth to provide you with the screenshots. I don't know if you've had a chance to actually already submit a child student visa application, but living arrangements are now reflecting further options. Just to let you know, the UKVI are currently working on making those changes available through a sponsor management system. That's where the CAS gets created. And we're aware that further free options will be making it to that list. So they're considering of having a full boarding at an independent school option with the caveat that the student would actually be leaving in holiday times or at times staying with the school. As you know, MPW London and our boarding house were open throughout the year, apart from obviously when students leave us at the end of the summer term, which will be end of next week, and also leave us over Christmas. So when those options will be available and finalized and put into the guidance, we will update you further with the communications of what you really need to be aware of when completing visa applications for the students. So this is more to focus on if you happen to receive a CAS, which confirms that the living arrangements of the student studying with MPW will confirm full boarding, then in those circumstances, you will obviously choose full boarding as an option. And you will then be prompted with further screens of concerning the living arrangements outside of the school. And that's where you will be required to provide the details of the nominated guardian. And once you click that option, you will then be given further details where you will complete details of that person who you will be or might be living with. And that's where your nominated guardian will go. So the nominated guardian will have to be the person as per your parental consent form, where the agreement has been reached, whether it's going to be a friend of the family, whether it's going to be distant uncle, auntie, etc. Or if it happens to be a guardianship company, then you will list the contact of the guardianship company in that fields. And there will be questions to do with what is their immigration status in the UK, and that's where you will be able to type in whether they're a British citizen, whether they've got settled status, and obviously you will need to back up the visa application with the supporting evidence as discussed earlier. So when we're looking at child student visa application changes, which applies to day students, so I would like to bring that to your attention that any students who happen to reside and opt for KSS residences, so if they would like to live at IQ or Lightfoot Hall in London, or they're opting for KSS options available in Cambridge, whether it's Malta Road, Student Castle, or in Birmingham, you're looking at Greenfield Crescent or George Street. In those circumstances, provided that it is a child student application and the student that you are submitting an application for on behalf of is age 16 or 17, you are required to select age 16 or 17 living independently. Please do not opt for boarding just because MPW and KSS work together of recommending the residents to stay. Neither the of KSS residences, whether it's MPW Birmingham, Cambridge, or London, they are not boarding residences. They're supervised, but they do not come under the boarding. And this is where potential triggers of further clarification from the Home Office might be raised, which cause further delays in processing your visa application. So at a point in time when you've ticked that you are opting for that specific living arrangement option, you will then be prompted with the screen. Do you have an emergency contact and carer in the UK? Please do say yes and complete that information, again, as per parental consent that the parents have signed, which we're providing with the final CAS, and include all the details from there. To avoid any confusion, our parental consent forms, where the child does go into living independently option, will state emergency contact in the UK rather than a nominated guardian as before. And this is more about the best practice. So the documents that we provide you with, they are hopefully helpful signposts as to how the visa application needs to be completed. So on all our CAS statements, when you receive it, you see the visa category, you see sponsor license name. Please do follow those, because yes, sometimes you might opt for the student category when applying for a visa, but if you have received the child student CAS, please follow that through to avoid any refusals, to avoid having issues with visas to be corrected, especially with child student having a lot more benefits, even when applying for visas within the UK rather than the student visa route. In light of the changes that Home Office has introduced, we are also now adding living arrangements to the CAS statement. So again, it will be very much categorized and will be positioned under the CAS number. So please complete your visa applications in light with what the living arrangement states to avoid any issues and any errors and questions from the UKVI. Obviously, if you happen to have boarding, that's going to be only for MPW London and when it's at Queensgate House. Should there be a situation with a close relative, again, the living arrangement will specifically state that. We will also state if someone is going into private foster care. So please just follow the CAS. Something to mention is to do with differentiation arrangement and how different nationals might be treated. So you've got a paragraph which refers to the Appendix Child Student of Immigration Rules, where the differentiation evidence of requirement is listed and provides all the nationalities that fall within that group. Even if you happen to be that national and you're free from providing financial evidence, or you're free from providing an academic evidence in the support of the visa, these are still the mandatory documents that will be required to be provided in support of the visa application. You're looking at passport, any BRPs, if they're obviously still present and available, so the Home Office can put things together. CAS number. Without this, you will not be even able to submit the visa application. Parental consent, signed by the parents. Obviously dependent on the specific scenario of the family, if the parents are separated or one of the parents is no longer there, ensure that that evidence has been provided as well, so there are further questions being avoided. Birth certificate and its official translation. So for any documents which are not in Welsh and English, the UKVI have got quite a designated list of what does apply to the translation. So it needs to be name of the translator, validating that they done the true translation of their original, put the date, that contact information. If it is company that does the translations, that they need to put their stamp of credentials and things like that to avoid, again, document not being accepted as valid. For any nationalities that are required to provide a TB certificate, that's also required to be presented. And now for any students who will come and be in boarding, letter of undertaking is also a must. And the letter of undertaking, we're obtaining a copy for any individual guardians, and we will be providing a copy with our final CAS to all. Obviously, dual nationals, where one of the nationalities falls with differentiation arrangement, what you need to ensure is that nationality and that passport is provided as the main passport for the visa application. And if you have a national who falls within that category, but then happen to provide the documents even though they were not required, the Home Office will make the judgment call as to whether they want to assess it. And if those documents happen not to meet the UKVI requirements, they reserve the right to refuse that visa application. So sometimes less is more. So as we are almost at the finish line, here are just a few helpful guides that we have available. So again, we are concentrating on how to get a CAS. So while your application might be moving on swiftly through the stages of having an interview, having an offer, having deposit paid, what else will we need to see as a further conditions to be fulfilled prior to CAS being actually issued. So those PDF guides are available from all our recruiters. We will provide the links and send it over to you with the presentation so you can refer to them. In terms of how to meet the financial evidence requirement for UK study visa application, it highlights the options of the visa, gives you an options of where student is likely to reside, and gives you a little bit of a handy reference what should be considered in terms of money per month, etc. And on the second page, it gives you a little bit more of a glossary and more of a black and white explanation what different terms might mean, such as, for example, date of the visa application. Date of the visa application is not where the student visits the visa application. It's when they, for example, make the payment and physically submit the application through the website. And that's it.
I love the way you say that so blasé, Nadia. And that's it, as though you haven't just gone through reams of information, which you have, which fascinating and all very, very clear in terms of that, but incredibly in depth. And I don't think without your knowledge and insight into that, a lot of people will be aware of some of these changes coming up. It's one of these things, isn't it? And I'm sure this is why you love compliance, but you have to just keep yourself updated, not on a yearly basis, but at the moment it seems like on a almost
Daily.
weekly basis, daily. Okay, we'll get it down to daily within that. Good. Well, look, it falls to us just to have a bit of a conversation, and there's a few questions coming through. But before that, I just wanted to ask you, can we take much by sort of comparing further education to the higher education sector? Because there's an awful lot of press, and there was an article out in the Pie yesterday in terms of acceptance rates and times of year in terms of when is better to apply for CASs and when isn't. Do we roughly fall in sync with the higher education sector, or are they really two different independent sectors, and therefore we shouldn't take too much stock by the stats that are quoted whenever you're comparing to higher education?
I think it's a lot to say with the higher education because they seem like focusing on a lot of changes, with white paper being a higher education sector rather than independent schools. But I equally feel that the scrutiny for the child student, where the sponsors are so much more involved, is so different. And I feel we have been really left alone to deal with this. And all these changes out of the blue seem to drive the way forward of making sure that we're actually, I guess, understood the information properly and are able to put the necessary action plans in place, as well as communicate with all our parties of how we will work on this. With the higher education sector, I think the applications are likely to be more of a last minute because the start dates of when those programs begin will be lagged on. And what I would like to avoid, and obviously we do have some of the students with conditional offer letters which happen to need to wait for the results date in August before they can make submissions. But if there is an opportunity to apply within the UK, and we genuinely do support that a lot, by getting students in the UK and making submissions there, because at least when you apply within the UK, you don't have to wait for the outcome and that passport return. You can join your studies as soon as the application is through. And it could be under consideration with decision pending, and you can benefit from not being delayed, not missing out on your lessons, and obviously subsequently not having a domino effect on the academic progress that you will have. I also feel with the current changes that there are, we might experience that, again, unpredictability of the Home Office and lack of training for their own staff might mean that there might be some teething issues. So if we were to start early, we might prevent a negative outcome and then being able to backtrack and potentially having to issue the second CAS. Again, I'm trying to preempt the refusals, but I don't think we're very confident that that's going to be the way forward. And again, it's transparency with all our customers. We always reach out. It's very much in bold and every final CAS. Should you have any further communication, get back to us. Let's work on this. we will find our ways of connecting with UKVI through different channels and hopefully supporting those applications.
Nadia, that was a very diplomatic way of saying that the Home Office staff may require a little bit more training themselves. How utterly scandalous of you to suggest otherwise. But just before we move on from that one, the article yesterday in the Pie sort of indicated, and you're right. I mean, quarter 3 is usually the busiest, and it falls in step with the academic years, etc. But early on in 2025, they seem to be indicating that from some of the countries that would normally traditionally have slightly higher refusal rates, they're getting slightly better acceptance rates on CASs at the moment. Can we be encouraged by that within our own sector, or is that just too much guesswork?
I think it's much of a guesswork, and I also feel that they don't really have a good representation of those numbers, because with the changes such as dependent route and removing that element out, we certainly feel that the number of applications is dropping rather than rising.
Okay, right. So look, I mean, speaking to the doctor isn't until next week with Adam Cross, but this is going to turn into something of a surgery now with you, I fear, Nadia, because there's a lot of questions coming through for you at this moment in time. So let's start with, look, most all guardians for under 18 students have a UK passport or indefinite leave to remain. So must all guardians for the under 18 students have that UK passport or indefinite leave to remain, or is there any flexibility within that? And can family members be the guardians for under 18s?
So what we have to be extremely careful on is we have MPW international policy on educational guardianships. Then we have a nominated guardian arrangement that applies anyone who is in boarding. And essentially, from our perspective as a sponsor, we equally open to work on a flexible basis, but it will open a can of worms when it comes to inspection by the UKVI, and where we have to present our policy that might not quite coincide with what Home Office is presenting. So we have made an assessment of all these introductions and the changes, and we do have a breakdown of individuals and how we will look at the guardianship arrangement. So at the moment, when it comes to sponsored students, so we're talking about MPW application process, is anyone who is under 18, we would rather go with guardian who is settled, British or Irish. Anyone who falls within the 18 to 20, we will call them a responsible adult. And this is where we will work with, again, each case individually. And it's less of a requirement of being indefinitely in the UK, but more with something like British national overseas or skilled worker if it's auntie, uncle, etc. And unfortunately, visitor visa will not be accepted in those circumstances, because we still have to ensure that what we require from the guardianship perspective has got an alignment with nominated guardian. And we are not calling them nominated guardian for that age group, because just to avoid confusion with the UKVI guidance, but we are going with responsible adult. So there is that helping hand who we have. When we're looking at that guardian to be then the relative, we need to be very careful how the visa application is completed, because you cannot quote that you're living with nominated guardian, but then that guardian subsequently meets the requirement of the close relative. It's everything to do with what's the visa category, it's child student. And then we're drilling it down. If it is an auntie of the auntie of the auntie, but sort of a relative, they could live with them, but they will be quoting 16 to 17 living independently rather than stating that they live with a close relative. So it's I don't want to, I hate myself for saying it's not black and white, but it really isn't. It's each case will be an individual case, and it's really hard to put a blanket approach, because if we went with the very strict attitude, oh, this is the only way or no way, all I can say is anyone who will be coming into boarding and they are applying at the child student route and they are age under 18, we cannot go away with being flexible.
The auntie of an auntie of an auntie. A prize for anyone who can tell me what relative that would be to somebody. Good, thank you. So, since the agent info must now be included on the cast now, does that mean that all agents must have a valid contract with the provider before a cast can be issued? What if they're in the process of being onboarded?
Okay, so obviously the Home Office pledge to update the visa applications as well as the CAS with the specific fields have not gone to plan, unsurprisingly. And what they have agreed that the changes will be coming. However, at this point in time, the sharing of the information, how the student has been recruited, is not compulsory. So when we assign the CAS, those fields to share the details with are not even there yet. So we've been advised that it's likely to come into autumn, but I will not be surprised if they put it through in August, in the peak of it. So our approach so far, because we are not aware how that data will be used, until it becomes a mandatory requirement, we will not be using that information. However, in terms of us working with the agents who are yet in the process of being onboarded, it's more with our compliance and financial aspect element, because it becomes a risk if the references for the agent and the contract has not been through a final stages for us to release a CAS, and then references will return, and for example there will be a potential issue with the visa application submission or anything like this, and obviously there is an element of commission, so it's slightly less of an immigration compliance, but it's more of organizational compliance.
Okay, thank you. Look, I mean, there's lots more to come here, and I just want to take the moment to thank all of our partners and to anyone who's asking questions at the moment and for really engaging with this topic today. One question now coming through is a three-parter for you, Nadia, so I'll take it in the three parts. Pertaining to the living arrangements outside of the school, the question is, who will you be living with when you are not at school? So if the student goes back home during holidays or stays with a host family for part of the break, should they select no in both cases? Now, some of this you will have touched on already, but for clarification purposes, should they select no in both cases or not?
To be honest with you, we have taken a very strict guidance on this, and we sought further advice from legal firm as well as the sort of support and help available to the independent school sector. And in line with MPW policy on having guardians, we are having to include the guardianship information in, because even though if we think that the student might have plans to go out of boarding every half term and definitely travel home, us having the nominated guardian as a part of the guardianship policy and having to potentially rely on them should they need to not be in boarding, it's better to do it that way rather than in emergency situation trying to collect the undertaking letters and release the child to that nominated guardian. And what if at a point in time that guardian doesn't meet the requirements? So until they publish the brand new category, which is there, we know that it's coming because they put it as a proposed changes coming through at a later stage. We will then be advising that please use that option where it states full boarding at an independent residential school, in brackets, going away or staying at school during the holidays. And that notion will take away the nominated guardian and having to complete that bit.
Okay, thank you. So part two, going on, now this is in reference to the guardian information. The person who asked the question noticed there's a setting change in terms of collecting the guardian information. So how would you suggest they fill in the guardian information section? So who will you be living with when you are not at school in the visa application? How is it different from the question asked for guardianship details in the previous setting? What will your living arrangements be within the UK, etc.?
Yeah. So essentially, I would say the best thing to do is rely on our parental consent form, which has got the data exactly as it should be put through. Obviously, it will not confirm what the immigration status of their guardian is, but then the guardian will be sharing that information with agency, families, etc. So they need to quote their name, date of birth, again, immigration status, address, and that address need to match exactly what we've been sharing them with.
Lovely. Stay with us, everyone. We'll get through all these questions, and it is recorded as well, so you'll be able to revisit these answers afterwards. Just to conclude the question, though, Nadia, the letter from the intended carer in the documents step. Why does the letter from your intended carer actually appear? Under what circumstances is that required? Is it a mandatory document?
So letter from intended carer will apply in the following scenarios where the student will be coming and the living arrangements will be in the private foster care. So that's where will be option one. Option two, where the close relative will be the one with who the child will reside. On number three, full boarding at independent residential school, and there is a nominated guardian.
Okay. Lovely.
And we provide the template, so we put all the information through. So again, there is nothing to worry about. What the nominated guardian might need to amend and include is any adults over the age of 18 who regularly reside at that same residence, so husbands, children, cousins, and also include any potential MPW students, I would say, that they are also caring for. For example, we've had an instance where we've got a guardian and they're looking after twins. So when the application is submitted for one sibling, then the other sibling is also mentioned that they will be in the care of the same guardian.
Lovely. Perfect. Thank you. Nadia, there was always going to be some person out there that knew the answer to an aunt of an aunt of an aunt. Sean Buckley suggested it's an aunt twice removed. So Sean wins the mystery prize today to be with you in the post shortly, Sean. Moving forwards, guardians must be a British citizen or settled status as they understand. How about indefinite residence permits or work visa holders? We've sort of touched on that, but do you just want to refresh your answer, I suppose?
Yeah. So it's indefinite leave to remain is no visa limits such as skilled worker, entrepreneurial, talent, anything like this cannot be considered where you've got an end date to the visa.
Okay, that's very clear. Thank you. If an agent student is using a guardianship company, would the passport of the contact person at the guardianship company need to be uploaded as part of the application?
No, but what you need to make sure that the guardianship company provides you with the letter that hits every point of what the requirement should be. And we work together with guardianship companies to ensure that they're including date of establishment, who they're accredited by, even though the current immigration rules do not have a classification whether the guardianship needs to be AGS or BSA accredited, but we're still taking forward. And then there will be quite a few paragraphs included that all our employees fulfill those requirements. We've already seen templates. So as long as that information is covered, that's absolutely fine.
What if the nominated guardian is a family friend? Would the guardian's passport need to be uploaded as well?
Yes, so they definitely need to provide a data page.
Okay. Jolly good. Are there any specific requirements to guardianship agencies by UKVI and MPW?
Well, with all the letter of undertakings that we will receive for anyone who will be boarding at Queensgate House, that's obviously a requirement that we will need to fulfill. And as a part of our own policy and process, each of the guardians will also have to sign and agree to the duties that are listed in our educational guardianship agreement, which will be sent via DocuSign in the next week. We've just been working on adapting it to fit all different scenarios.
Okay, jolly good. If the student is currently taking GCSE at MPW and would like to continue on to A levels, and we applaud them for such a wise and valuable decision, can they process the student visa in the UK, or do they have to return to their home country? I mean, this one's been around for a very long time, but
100% yes.
No ambiguity in that. 100% yes. Jolly good. Thank you for that. What about a 15-year-old child who plans to return to home country during the school holidays? Does he or she still have to hire a nominated guardian, even if they don't need any guardianship service?
Yes, because that's going to be our condition to issue the CAS.
Lovely. Okay. Um, if the student is using a guardianship company, is it considered a nominated guardian, or does the nominated guardian still need to be inputted? As in, is it the company or the name of the guardian within the company?
So they will put the company, and then they will also put the contact name, which again is all provided on the letters of undertaking. So whoever is the managing director or potentially might be the contact associated with that guardianship company, provided that they put the name and the letter clearly states we're a company, that's going to be no issues. Again, what we have seen and heard, the Home Office have said, if the visa application happened to be not quite accurate, they will work with the sponsors to get their understanding correctly. And that's why us providing the guidance on how the application form needs to be completed, it would be best that it's followed to the T, and all of these different scenarios. But what if I don't leave for holidays? What if I don't do that? Are avoided, because then it opens another ambiguity and how we are aware of the application versus what the Home Office sees.
Okay. Um, is it just MPW, London, Birmingham, or Cambridge who have the right to issue a letter of undertaking?
I don't think I understand the question.
Not sure 100% I do in here as well. So for the person who's asked the question, perhaps they can clarify it for
Just
us.
to confirm, so when we have the letter of undertaking as a condition prior to CAS would only apply for MPW for the following scenarios: child, student, fully boarding, and the guardian, who is the nominated guardian or an educational guardian, is not a guardianship company. This is
Yeah,
where we will give a template, we collect the data, get the signatures and ink, and then we will proceed with the CAS and provide all the
absolutely.
documents in support of the visa.
Absolutely. Look, there are lots of technical questions on here, and I think to anyone who's asked a technical question, we can take these offline to hear as well. We'll review all the questions, and if you'd like to identify who you are, we'll come back to you with the answers for some of the technical ones. And there's a lot of questions that cross over as well, so hopefully you're getting your answers already, or they can be revisited in the recording of the presentation. Nadia, if a student has a nominated guardian, but one of the parents will be going to the UK to take care of them outside of term time, so during the holiday periods, how would you suggest they fill out the living arrangement outside of school section? Any technical wording to that one?
I would 100% go with nominated guardian option because
Hmm.
that's your safe bet. And then dependent obviously on which basis the parents will be coming. If they happen to visit the UK over Christmas and they will be spending the time with the children doing sightseeing, whatever they want to do during that time, provided that we have a written consent from the family, we obviously release the child to them. The Home Office have been quite open in terms of the parents coming over, especially at the beginning of the program, where the induction takes place, where people start assimilating into the new environment, as they recognize it's a beneficial support to have home from home. So even those parents who might be staying in the hotels or serviced residences within the area of, say, South Kensington, children will be able for the first few weeks to reside with them, even though they're not nominated guardians, even though they don't meet British Irish settled status. So there is that way how we can work, and obviously make it work for them too.
Lovely. Okay. I think we're probably in last knockings territory here, Nadia. There's one I want to handle a little bit with care because it feels a little bit of a reach around, maybe even a loophole within this. But if a 15-year-old child has a 30-year-old brother living in London with a work visa, is the child not therefore allowed to live with the brother? And in the situation where the answer is yes, of course, and then the child finds a foster carer, moves into a foster carer's home, but doesn't enjoy, once there, living with the foster carer, Would they then be allowed to move to the brothers? Is that allowed? And I think the answer is probably no to that, but we would have to just ask you again on this one. Because there's a rider in here from the person asking the question that says it should be supported by the local authority as this is in the best interests of the child. Now, that feels a little bit like a specific scenario, and maybe you'd like to ask that question to us offline from here, but just as immediate reactions to that one.
Unfortunately, I hate to be the bad cop, but it will not be possible. Where the things could be considered beneficial or non-beneficial from the common sense, human interaction, and third-party arrangements such as, local authorities and social services involved. When it comes down to the UKVI, if the child receives a CAS and the understanding is they are living with a private foster care, it means that they're there. They cannot then be residing elsewhere. And even with the full boarding, if you are a 15-year-old, but then you happen to have siblings who might be studying at a degree level in the nearby universities, have got an apartment where that child could reside, we have to tread extremely carefully, because the moment that they will start, I don't know, policing or doing checks, whether it happens to be during the inspections of third parties, such as ISI, or whether it's going to be actually transpiring through UKVI inspection, we cannot find a loophole of keeping children in boarding just because they're under 16 and they cannot have any other visa routes to remain in the UK. But equally, they're spending all their time, especially during the week, Monday to Friday, staying with friends, staying with relatives, visiting aunties, etc. We will work on having, a clear understanding, but it cannot be just constantly not in the boarding, but having a boarding address against their visa. Because the moment that the care arrangements is not followed, we are obligated to report that to the authorities and UKVI.
Fantastic. Right. I'm going to say this. Any more for any more at this moment in time. There was a number of questions in there that crossed over with other people's questions. So hopefully your answers have been found throughout this. If they haven't, please do contact us, your relevant regional manager, or even Nadia and her team directly. But are there any other questions anyone would like to answer today? Otherwise, I think letting Nadia breathe a little bit and re-topping up her coffee is probably going to be the right way forward. But Nadia, just while we wait to see if anyone else has any other questions, number one, thank you. You do have a hard job, a very hard job, not least because the government keep changing everything, but largely as well because you're often accused of being too strict or reading the rules too strictly, if we can put it that way. Are you, or is this absolutely to the letter of everything?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
with
very
the
much
mind that we're still, we are working, and MPW, it is tailored, not uniform. I hate to to repeat it, but the tagline. But essentially, we are here to support and find out what's the beneficial element and what improves the study experience in the UK. We're not here to be strict. We are echoing what the safeguarding element and the focus is. However, we will be prepared on working, I don't want to say on flexible arrangements, but on understandable arrangements that will not impact us as a sponsor and take away the license and put us on an action plan. We will work with families so their students could thrive and be supported in every possible way that we can achieve. But we will still abide by the law. It's just the balance of it, and that's why when I bring the non-black and white answers, I'm trying to be open, but equally not behind the bars.
Absolutely. And look, I mean, we are extremely lucky and extremely grateful to you and your team here at MPW for the support and guidance you're able to give us. Also, I'm sure I speak for everyone, for the network of our partners and agents and students and their families who get to benefit from the fact that you keep abreast of all of these updates and decisions and all of these sorts of things. Sometimes you just have to be a little bit clear and a bit strict and be the person with the whip and the cane at the end of it all, because that's the way of staying compliant and the way of actually getting people through something, which, as Sean very rightly identifies here, is something you can't afford to get wrong in the grand scheme of it. Yes, we safeguard ourselves, but we safeguard other people along the way as well. Just a couple of final quick questions for you, Nadia. When are you going to start to issue the student CASs?
We
opened ourselves up to this.
I would say final ones probably by the end of this week, but we are working on getting all of this nitty-gritty with parental concerns letter for undertaking, which obviously has been not very helpful from the UK VI perspective, and we needed to run through a few legal checks just to make sure that we are not creating a burden for our customers. So anybody who is ready to draft is very much should be receiving the drafts by the end of this week at the latest.
Absolutely. Subtext, thank you for your patience. We are nearly there on all of that one. And Nadia, one last one that gives you a bit more of a personal question for you than anything else. Which part of UK VI regulations scares you the most? Within what keeps you up at night and what makes you ultra focused during your day job?
Safeguarding. And the element that, again, it's very ironic, but they seem to want too much, but we can't quite understand how they're going to manage it. And it's the overflowing responsibility from our side as a sponsor.
Can I just segue that a little bit and ask you just to give a very brief overview, because you've just but relatively recently been through a UK VI audit, haven't you, at one of our sites over in MPW Birmingham? So you've actually had to go through this. Were your fears realised? Did it solidify them for you? Did it alleviate some of them? But how was the experience of going through a UK VI audit for you and the outcome?
Sleepless nights until the outcome. Because they are very good at playing poker faces, and from the sector perspective and the feedback that we've heard, they will never be able to tell you how well you're doing, because they're there to collect the data, and there is another element of the operation machine who will then assess the data and come back with either suggestions, recommendations, or quite significantly action plans. It's obviously nice to hear that everything that we've done so far and have been doing, and it's never just a pat on the back and carrying on as before. But I don't think having a positive outcome should put us in the perspective where we relax and we will stop doing what we do. So no recommendations have been made to us, which is fantastic. It's a massive achievement, and it's not just the people who had to present in that interview room. It's the joint effort of every single person within the team, because I cannot say how much of a backing I do get from the leadership team, from the support of my team, with recruitment team that I work with. And no matter how difficult and challenging situations might be, we always open and give a helping hand. You know, we want to achieve and succeed together. So I think it's just the element of, just because we become strenuous, just because we started asking for birth certificates to support parental consents, it's everything aimed on to have a successful outcome with less hurdles to jump through.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it was a remarkably good achievement, and one that we hope to replicate very shortly in Cambridge and London. But I mean, suffice it to say, we're not sat here today pretending we know chapter and verse on everything. I mean, we're pretty close, but at the same time, we learn as we go along as well, and that's very much seen within Nadia and her team. Two quick questions, and I want 2 quick answers if you can, please, Nadia. Guardianship companies, do we recommend, or do people have their opportunity to choose their own?
I would say just go with IGS accredited or BSA accredited. There is a website you can always locate, and some of them specialize in supporting specific markets.
Jolly
And
good.
sometimes it's very important for families to have that relationship in the native language as well. So
Absolutely. Absolutely right. If you want further clarification on that, please do contact your relevant regional manager or even the MPW head office. And the last question, Nadia, that we were going to take today has already been answered, which is for MPW Cambridge, the KSS residents, are they categorised as full boarding or 16 to 17-year-old independent living? And the answer is the latter, 16 to 17-year-old independent living. As of this moment in time, it is only MPW London that has full boarding status. KSS independent residence living is available in London, but it is specific as well to Cambridge and Birmingham at this moment in time. Nadia, any closing thoughts from yourself? I'm going to close the questions at this stage. Closing thoughts from yourself, and then we'll conclude today.
Just thank you for bearing with me. I know it hasn't been an easy ride, and I don't think it's going to become any easier. But again, with every single introduction, any single challenge, it's an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to absorb. And I would say that with the open mind of the UKVI, I do not think that those changes are there yet. The likelihood is they will start monitoring anyone who is applying under student, who happens to be under the age of 18 with a very similar WIP approach, and the likelihood is the child student living independently will become a scrutiny at a later stage too. They've just sort of opened the dialogue and said, we are currently looking at this, but there is no reason why your approach should not apply to all under 18s or etc. So I would say watch this space, continue engage with us. If you happen to obviously see any specific concerns from your side where the UKVI are clearly asking something that they shouldn't be asking, reach out and flag up and we'll work with you.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm not sure I'd say the UKVI have an open mind, probably more of an open nature when it comes to decisions. But as this is live and recorded, we will stop our views on it there. And just to say, look, thank you enormously to Nadia, who was not asked to mention tailored, not uniform, but it does actually, the way you can segue that in nicely into conversations now really does play to what MPW actually is. And as I've said before, we are incredibly lucky to have Nadia and her expertise here, but also her team who are working very hard and will be working very hard over the summer to issue the CASs. Please bear with her. She will have everything out to you. If you have questions, contact us here at MPW, either via your regional manager or obviously to our international compliance and admissions team directly, to Nadia, to Ryan, to Ladina, who should be able to give you the answers that you might like. Nadia, it was incredibly useful, incredibly thorough, and incredibly recorded as well. So it's there for people to revisit, to go back through any of the recording that they might feel necessary and appropriate. Keep up to date, ladies and gentlemen. These things are subject to change and will continue to be so. But every time there is a change, we will update via our marketing channels. And if you would like this presentation to be done again, do let us know. In the meantime, we have one more week left to us on this current webinar series, which I will announce in just one moment, but suffice it to say as well, if there's anything else you would like a topic on, anything we have not covered in this year's series, anything still to be gone through, do send us an email, a note, and we will pop a presentation on for the following week. We enjoy doing these, not least because it enables us to connect with you all and to stay relevant and in touch, but really because the more we can educate from the outset, the better things are from the start of the year onwards. And if we're all on the same page, it's a much better book to read. So, ladies and gentlemen, concluding at this present moment in time, our webinar series next week is Call the Doctor. Doctor Who? No, it's Adam Cross from Birmingham to actually give, that was terribly dramatic, but next week to give an interactive session on the medical application, specifically more towards the interview side, the MMI series, and just any tips, tricks, and anything relevant, not only to A-level students, but to NCUK students who, as you found out earlier in the process, are also able to apply to medical school nowadays. So next week, join join us Wednesday, 10 o'clock, once again, to conclude the series. Nadia, thank you very much indeed for today. Anyone else with any further questions, do get in touch. And ladies and gentlemen, enjoy your days. Thank you. Bye-bye.